At the University of Regina, the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Digital Resource Hub showcases impactful EDI initiatives across the campus.
It's a centralized, accessible resource for our community and post-secondary institutions nationally.
Join us to hear the stories behind the initiatives shaping our campus.
I'll just start from my doctoral thesis. I'm actually working on transnational African cinema or African transnational cinema, because they mean two different things. And I am looking at how this works, particularly safeguard African cultural heritage. And by that, I actually mean some of those worldviews, cosmological exigencies, and principles that we actually once held in Nigeria, and how they are being transported here as living cultural heritage. The whole idea about transnational flow of migrants comes with not just bodily travels, but also philosophical and worldview travels. These things actually travel with us, consciously. We're actually conscious of that. But by the time we get here, we are faced with all kinds of challenges, whether racism, cultural shocks, and what have you. But as Africans, we have this sense of, displaying and expressing in the African way, despite this form of negotiation which has to take place, as it were. So my work basically shows how these films, represent African cultural heritage and how they are meant to be safeguarded. All right, the veritable conundrum that has always been a part of the black man, and why he has to exceedingly prove himself, is racism. And I mean, we keep talking about this for years. So, and one of the focuses of EDI is to see how they can actually quench this veritable conundrum, this thing called racism. Coexisting, or the need to coexist, is a very, very important way to ensure that racism does not continue, or at least it's actually leaped in the mud, or perhaps it is curtailed to a certain level. And one way in which my work actually offers some kind of suggestion is to give these people an opportunity to express themselves in terms of cultural exigencies, in terms of intellectual display, representation of what it is that makes us Africans and what makes us tick as Africans. I mean, this is the whole idea around safeguarding cultural heritage with cinema. And I think that to a very large extent, I have actually shown, that in my work, which is still ongoing and almost wrapping up, as it were. Then secondly is the film festival, really, the African International Film Festival, which is the premier province's African festival. And it showcases not just works coming in from Africa, but also showcases works that are being produced here in diaspora. Apart from diaspora Canada, we have films from diaspora USA, diaspora England, diaspora Sweden, and the whole idea is to give voices to both established filmmakers, but most especially debutant filmmakers who really want their voices to be heard. And again, it's not just about screening Africa. We are also giving credibility to Saskatchewan, that has also allowed us to screen some of this film, or to even establish the festival. And one of the ways in which we did that was to carve out a niche prize for the best Saskatchewan film. All right, is to show that is to actually offer this idea around belonging. Coexistence actually, permeates the entire society without any form of inhibition or without any suspicion or without any kind of ill feeling that we might have, towards each other, as it were. I think highly of the faculty because it's a way of also telling us that they are all embracing. It's a faculty that understands what it means to, understand what it means to include or be inclusive, of everyone, as it were. And that's not something you can actually struggle to find in the faculty of MAP in terms of promoting EDI in at all levels. Yeah, they may have their challenges. I mean, that's actually part of life. But then it is a faculty that you can actually vouch for. And I will give you examples. I was employed into the department about a year after I got into the university, and it has been beautiful. The way not just the way my immediate colleagues would treat me, but also my bosses. My supervisor, who, incidentally is a global scholar, and also someone who has spent 36 years studying global Southern cinema, including African cinema, African literature, African cultural studies, and other alternate studies, including Asia, third world literature and cinema, and what have you. She would accommodate you. She would want to put you through everything that you want to do. And the thing is that we're in an environment, these people have actually made the environment so conducive that it is what you desire to do that they would want you to encourage, that they want to encourage you to do. It's not as if they are actually imposing anything. There are some systems where, all right, they will tell you this, they want to impose whatever it is that they have at hand to impose. But here there's that democratization of dispensation with knowledge and acquisition of knowledge. Nothing is forced down. All right, it's like taking courses that are core, but then alternatives, you choose whatever you want. All right. Secondly, is also the work of teaching as a sessional lecturer. One thing I have come to realize is that while I teach students who cut across all the continents in the world, there is this feedback that I get from them that really gives me a lot of satisfaction. It is also part of the inclusiveness. It's about giving, and then when you give, you take back. And taking back is the feedback that needs to be given, all right? While I teach these students world cinema, that's practically what I'm teaching. I teach world cinema, picking case studies films from all over the world for 15 weeks. These students also educate me by telling me things that I do not know about their culture. Now, imagine me screening, let's say, a work like Slumdog Millionaire. I may know so much about Bollywood, but that doesn't mean that I know so much about Indian culture. So those indices are the things that I learn from my students. I am only supposed to teach you how to read those films. But when you bring in issues of cultural exigencies and cultural matters, cosmological matters of India, it adds to my knowledge as a cultural studies expert, all right? You can't know it all, but you learn from the other person. So showing that kind of address, okay, that direct address to my students gives them the opportunity to speak freely with me, but with respect. In other words, they know that I am not imposing. I am not a domineering teacher. And it is because the faculty does not allow that. All right? The faculty does not give room for that. It is zero tolerance to that kind of relationship. So that is why I feel that the faculty actually scores high. It scores high in displaying this kind of forms of EDI. And then the last thing I would like to say is that I remember when we wanted to choose the current dean. I think this thing actually occurs every 5 years. They set up a committee, and then they choose specific people to be on the board, including the deputy dean, that is the associate dean, and then the provost, a representative from the registry's office, a representative from the VC's office, that is the president's office, and then representative from the graduate studentship. I was the one who I actually represented the faculty, all right, the graduate students conclave, and in all fairness, I was the only black person there, and they didn't treat me like an outsider. They treated me with that exceptional respect that you can ever imagine, and I felt at home. Call it what you like, but I felt at home. All right, I felt at home. My views were respected. My views were challenged, but at the same time, there's a way you stand your ground as somebody who is just coming into the system, and it is because of what you have studied. All right. One thing I've actually come to realize about life is that when you get to a system, you need to study the system, know exactly how it is, how it operates. If there is, whatever it is that actually occurs, just keep yourself abreast with it. And the knowledge of the faculty gave me that urge, that opportunity to be able to express myself and to either disregard or not choose or choose a particular person or a particular potential dean who is fit to run the faculty for the next 5 years. And it was something that I really enjoyed. Well, they are not changes really, but they are part of the episteme of the everyday faculty practice. Okay, I mentioned previously how open the faculty is and how accommodating the faculty is. So I think it has actually existed from time immemorial. That's how I say it. It's something that I encountered, and it has always been there. So is there an improvement? What do I know? The thing is that it's a practice. It's part of the life. It's part of the existence of the faculty. For instance, I take my the film festival, for example. Luckily for me, I didn't even take it to the dean because I needed help. I didn't take it to the dean. I didn't take the matter to the associate dean. In fact, I didn't take it to Professor Mike Rolo. I didn't take it to even my supervisor because they should be the last people to hear. But when I was just speaking with the administrative officers who are like, cohorts to me, who I also, hold in high regard, I just told them, I was just going through this. This is what has happened. And they said, today, that shouldn't be a problem. We can host it for you. And then La Cité will also screen concurrently with Shoebox. And that was how they helped salvage the situation. Not the dean, not the associate dean, not my supervisor, not even the HOD, because I didn't want to belabor them with that kind of problem. But it took 2 administrative workers who were there to help, who were ready to help without asking me for anything. And I felt, in fact, it shows that there is something about the faculty that is strong on equality, that is strong on encouraging inclusion and have zero tolerance for this kind of discrimination. All right. So, again, one thing when I sit down and think about all these kind of prejudices, I realize that if it has to go, if it has to be nipped in the bud, if it has to be defaced, it will take time. This is something that has been happening for centuries, and it will not be erased in one day. Well, are there really challenges? There are times when you think you're actually going through a phase that is not palatable, and all you need to do is just to voice it out. They may seem like challenges to you, me, or any how do I put it now? Equity deserving person, but perhaps the faculty would not know that it is a challenge to you. So it's just a matter of just voicing out, and then I am sure that the faculty would take it up. I mean, I gave you a very beautiful experience, which was which was a problem for me, but at the end of the day, I was accommodated, and I was assured that no, it's not a problem. We'll take care of that. In fact, the administrators actually practically left what they were doing to attend to me for 1 hour. That is one. And then two, this is still surrounding my research and the film festival. So I merged the two of them together. Now, there is something we do in the faculty once you're actually close to rounding off your PhD, and that is what we call the doctoral showcase. At first, I thought the doctoral showcase was going to be gleaned, or the presentation was going to be gleaned from what I was doing in my project directly. But then my supervisor said, "Oh, you have a film festival. Oh my God, this is nice. Now I want you to pick an aspect of that film festival and talk about how film festivals actually operate in the global north." And I said, okay, I just said, all right, fine. For me, it's an opportunity to showcase not just the film festival in a scholarly manner, but also my forte in the scholarship of African transnational cinema. You could say that as somebody writing a thesis on African transnational cinema in the context of safeguarding cultural heritage here in the global north, or the western orbit of the world, you could say that the African Film Festival is like a practical work that is actually related to the theoretical work that I am doing in my project. So for me, that is an eye-opener to solving one of the problems of a student or a scholar in the field. All right. Again, I would like to say that bringing me to Campion College from here is a plus to my career. I assure you, it's a plus to me. In other words, what it means is that I would have taught in every place that matter in this university. Going to Campion College is a plus for me. It's a plus for my career because it's a new terrain. It's a very cozy, lovely place. But I feel privileged going there, even as a PhD candidate and also as a sessional lecturer. The last thing I would like to say is that perhaps the only thing that I would really love to see in the faculty is more order than Canadian people, teach, employed and teach in the department. Maybe I'm even the second Black person teaching in the faculty after Professor Taiwo. So it's 0.2% to 99% in terms of teaching opportunities and all that. It is always good to have. It's not just about Africans, but maybe Indians, maybe Asians. For instance, Professor Shilapeti taught Chinese cinema, for a long time. Now that she's gone, who takes up that challenge? If the current lecturers are not interested, it will not exist. All right. So, but we need some of these people. One of the things I hope to propose by the time I am done with my doctoral thesis, and which I will mention during my doctoral showcase come September 12, is that we need an Institute of Transnational Studies. Now, as you can see, I say transnational studies. I did not say transnational cinema, and I did not say African transnational cinema, because African diaspora is not the only diasporic community here. There are lots of diasporic communities. So this institute will do a lot. It will cater to studies, the practice and praxis of transnational studies, simply devoted to transnational studies. We do not have it here. And I think the University of Regina is a place where that can actually accommodate this idea. Are you getting what I'm saying? So it's part of what you call the challenge, because we do not have it. And if we are bound to experience, all those kind of institutional roadblocks, because those roadblocks themselves are also challenging, because I know that the school in itself is actually going through a lot of kind of challenges that they need to solve. The school also has its own problem, and they need to solve that. So before they can actually accommodate that kind of institute or all kinds of institutions within the university, they need to solve their own issues. So in that way, as equity disabled people, we also empathize with the university. However, we just feel that as you toggle along, as you face struggles, it doesn't mean that you cannot innovate. It doesn't mean that you cannot give room for innovation. So for me, I believe that as the school goes through its struggle, they can still contend with or think about or consider all kinds of innovative propositions and proposals that are lying side by side with those struggles. Probably those innovations can actually be a problem-solving agenda, can actually form a problem-solving agenda for some of the struggles of the universities. Thank you. There are two things actually. A team is not a team if you do not give a damn about one another. You cannot work in isolation. You can't accomplish anything in isolation. So you need to work with people, and you also need to develop a thick skin to tolerate the other person. You cannot determine what the other person will say or do to you, or how the person will relate to you. However, you can determine your own equanimity. And the last thing I'm going to say is that no matter whatever you're experiencing, especially if they are not things that you are happy about, voice out, talk, speak. Do not keep quiet. Keeping quiet is good, but I can assure you, if it matters to you to survive in an environment that you are finding so strange, you need to talk, speak to someone, and you'll be better off for it.